Thank you for joining Jackson Lewis as we take a closer look at the employment law trends and tactics sure to shape 2023. This installment is one of 12 concise, field-specific podcast episodes that are part of our annual forecasting favorite, The Year Ahead. We invite you and others at your organization to experience the report's legislative, regulatory, and litigation insights in full at our website, jacksonlewis.com, or listen to the podcast series at whichever platform you turn to for compelling content.
Hi, I'm Peggy Strange, and I'm here today with my friend Laura Mitchell, and we're going to talk about our favorite topic, pay transparency in the year ahead. So Laura, 2023 is here, and what do you see in the near future and beyond for pay transparency?
Yeah. Hi, Peggy. Happy New Year. So in 2023, surprisingly, the prediction is more of the same. I think we're going to continue to see pay transparency laws come into effect, be enforced by the states. We likely will see some new laws, some new obligations, maybe even something on the federal level. I think we're kind of holding our breath a little bit on that one, but that's part of what we're seeing in our crystal ball. It's definitely more of the same.
More of the same, and more of the same means I keep getting the little updates on the new state laws. So I know they're coming. And do you see similarities in these laws from state to state?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing the trend. So, when pay transparency first got white hot, it was about prohibition on use of prior salary information in setting current salary. And then it progressed to having to disclose pay information upon request by an applicant or an employee. And now it is flat out just having to put the pay range proactively on job postings. That's the newest and latest trend, and we've seen a couple of states and jurisdictions come out with that recently. And then the next piece is actually submission of pay data to the states for evaluation, and we see that in California, which we've had that for a number of years, and the Illinois requirement now. So we will continue, I believe, to see more advancement in this proactive, having to disclose information, this push towards fuller transparency.
And in this push for fuller transparency, do you see differences from these different state laws, or is it just we could just easily comply with them all?
Oh, I wish. I wish they were all the same, but in fact, they are each unique in their own ways. And they're kind of compilations of the laws that have come before. They are true patchworks, which makes compliance extremely difficult for nationwide employers. I wish we could have just one blanket approach to the laws, but they're so unique and different that that's even turning out hard. We see some corporations, some organizations trying to manage to the most rigorous compliant law, and they're so different that even that approach isn't going to make it so that they're compliant with each state.
Okay, so we keep hearing, and I've had confusion about pay bans versus pay transparency. Can you help me kind of figure out the difference between, if there is, between pay bans and what you put out there for pay transparency?
Yeah, understandably, because organizations can disclose full pay bans as part of their pay transparency response or part of their pay transparency philosophy. However, most of the state laws don't require that. A pay band typically covers a lot of different roles or job titles within an organization. A band is much broader and it's set with a midpoint, and you have a number of different roles that are assigned within a band. These pay transparency requirements, with one asterisk and a caveat that I'll talk about, don't require disclosure of that entire band. They require the disclosure of what you would pay for a role at the time of hire. So the pay band is actually much broader than what you are required to disclose. The asterisk to that is Washington, who is added a fun little piece to our patchwork that they require. Not only do you have to disclose the pay for the role that you're hiring in, but the actual full pay band, as we will call it, for the position once an individual is hired into it. So you actually have both of those requirements in Washington, which is further going to add to the confusion, I believe.
All right, so clients want to simplify. We all want to simplify our lives. So going forward, a lot of clients are saying, you know what, I'll just go with a really broad range, right? I'll just capture every state and I'll just do my big pay bands. Does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that was part of the strategy in the beginning before we had Washington, before we had some recent clarification from Colorado that, okay, if we're going to see these laws roll out across the country, let's just have ranges that cover everywhere. So we don't have to manually or individually manage what's going on with each of the states. Unfortunately, I'm not so sure that that's going to work or be the best approach for a number of reasons. One, we've seen some pretty strong negative reaction to some organizations that have tried to disclose these really broad pay bands to the extent that they actually aren't giving applicants enough information to evaluate or compare between jobs or between roles. It's just too amorphous. Colorado specifically has said in their recent guidance that you have to disclose the pay range that you would pay for that role in Colorado. So if you have a much broader range, how are you defining what part of that range applies to Colorado? So I think that there are some difficulties with taking this really broad range approach to disclosure.
All right. So then we're also getting questions about geo differentiations. What are your thoughts on setting pay differences based on geography and where people live and where they're from?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we have seen more and more, especially as workforces turn more remote. We have organizations that are contemplating just doing away with a geo differential because they don't actually care where individuals sit. They're going to pay for the role, the job that you're doing, not the locale in which you are doing the work. That can actually make pay setting and pay disclosures easier because you don't have to differentiate with the different states or comply with the different requirements. However, if you are an organization that has a philosophy where you are going to pay for those geo differentials, then you do have to take into consideration the impact of the different states and how are you going to manage that? How do you manage when individuals move, right? Does that go into your company policy about notice, about location, that type of thing? So there's some broader implications around what a company wants to do with respect to employee location and pay associated with those differentials.
All right. And what should clients do about bonuses and incentives? Should they include those as well?
So at a base level, each state is coming out with different requirements as to what you have to disclose. Some of our state laws don't require even a mention of bonus or incentive compensation. Other states are taking a middle ground, like Colorado, where you have to mention that there is an additional type of compensation available, but you don't have to give any details about it. Washington, again, has stepped up the requirements, and you have to give a more detailed description. However, none of the laws are requiring an actual monetary disclosure along with the identification of an additional compensation component. So the pay disclosure piece of it, again, you're going to have to monitor compliance with the state. And if you want to take a one-size-fits-all approach, then you're going to have that approach tailored to the most specific requirement, which right now is Washington. I will say, though, with respect to a proactive compensation analysis piece outside of disclosure, what an organization is doing to understand their own pay, you absolutely should be looking at these additional components of pay because we are seeing in our litigation and our pay claims this focus on total compensation, which is not just base pay anymore.
And that actually leads to my next question is how will all this play out in litigation for the pay equity disputes? Will this come into play at all?
I think, in a typical attorney answer, which we love, right? It's going to depend, and we're going to have to wait and see. I'm not sure that these are going to be standalone claims. I can't really see that there will be much for an individual to raise a claim to say that the pay disclosure on this job posting was somehow, it can't be discriminatory, but it violated the law. I actually think we're going to see them as add-on claims or tack-ons with respect to an individual who's alleging pay discrimination. And as a result of that, they point to, listen, this job was posted at this amount of money, and I ended up getting something different while I have an individual of a different protected class who is actually being paid more than me. I think that it potentially could be evidence. I'm not so sure how strong of evidence, but we're going to have to wait and see how courts interpret that. And I think the first piece we have to get past is actual enforcement by the states. We are just now entering into a period of time where there's some true enforcement. Colorado started to give kind of a free pass on the first violation to give notice and then allow employers to correct that non-compliance posting. We see some of these other laws actually writing into the law that you get a first opportunity to correct before any fine or penalty will be enforced. So I think we have to get compliance in enforcement before we can actually get these as the basis or used in any type of discrimination claim or litigation.
As we wrap up here at the end of the day, what is the best thing for employers to do right now?
Yeah, that's another fantastic question as we're trying to triage all of the different requirements and compliance. I think from my perspective, the most fundamental important piece is for organizations to understand what their compensation systems are. How do they set pay, and what are they going to use to disclose pay? Because if you don't understand your foundation, if you don't know what it is and how you pay and what you pay for, how can you go about making that information public? So I think taking some time to really thoughtfully understand and develop a compensation system is going to be key for compliance going forward.
Thank you, Laura, for, I've been on many calls with you on this topic, and you've been brilliant in how do we operationalize our compliance with these laws, because it's complicated, it's new, it's different, but we can help with compliance. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. It's always my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for the Year Ahead 2023 Special Edition podcast series. Please tune in to the next episode where we will continue to tell you not only what's legal, but what is effective. All of our Jackson Lewis podcasts are available to stream and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Libsyn, Pandora, SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher, and YouTube. For more information on today's topic, our presenters, and other Jackson Lewis resources, visit jacksonlewis.com. As a reminder, this material is provided for informational purposes only. It is not intended to constitute legal advice, nor does it create a client-lawyer relationship between Jackson Lewis and any recipient.